What a night. The breaking news this evening is that every single National who was serving in the shadow cabinet of Susan Lee is now no longer in there. Why? Because the ones who voted against the coalition and a negotiated position when it came to the hate laws, well, they had to resign. Why? Because you can't be a member of the shadow cabinet and then vote against its decisions. Otherwise, well, what is the point of trying to pull these things together at all? That then triggered a threat from the Nationals leader, David Littleproud, which was that every sitting Nationals MP, who was a shadow minister, was going to walk away. That is what has happened. Susan Lee tonight is saying that she has spoken to David Littleproud and she is hoping to keep the coalition together. Remember, of course, the coalition already broke straight after the election, was able to be renegotiated and put back together again, but who knows how many times Humpty Dumpty will be able to be put back together again. The best I could do with our team of writers here. Lucy Zelich is here. As always, you can read in the Daily Telegraph here on the radio and see her here oh so often. Love you, darling. And always here to help, and a man who I'm sure is just so devastated watching political enemies fall apart like this is Stephen Conroy. Stephen, I'll start with you. Firstly, Happy New Year. As self-destruction goes,
Happy New Year. Great to be back.
This is a whole new level, mate.
Look, I've not seen the sort of self-inflicted wounds like this in a very long time. I mean, the Labor Party back in the 70s was brilliant. Well, probably 60s and 70s was brilliant at keeping itself in opposition. It was purity of policy above all else. This is a little different. This is like the National Party in sheer panic of the possibility of losing their particularly Queensland seats, but many seats to One Nation, because when you see a 20% figure, that means they're probably polling very significantly higher than the Liberal Party primary or National Party primary in those Queensland seats. And so they are in a blind panic. They are looking after themselves first. They don't care if they destroy Susan Lee. She's, I predicted she'd be gone by Christmas. I was wrong, but she could be gone before Parliament sits again in early February. So she scored an enormous own goal. She said, I want Parliament back before, this Christmas. Yeah. I'm writing legislation. Like, where's the legislation? Where's your alternative policy position? Because you clearly couldn't get the coalition to back an actual position on this rather than running in different directions. So this is incredible self-inflicted wounds.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing is, I've always argued and I've always wondered and I've always wanted to see, not quite as a political stunt, but just as an exercise, right? If somebody could walk into any parliament, the Senate, and try and move a one-line piece of legislation, which is Australians have a right to free speech, all right? Now, we know that all the heads would explode, and the reality of what we have just seen about what's played out in Canberra is no, we don't. Yep. Now, when we have a look at that, say, that Victorian standard about ridicule, potential jail terms for that, what does that mean? To what extent? What do you have to do to prove it? And then all of this gets compounded.
Are you seriously surprised, though, Paulie?
No, I'm not surprised. I just want people to know.
Government?
Well, yeah, I get it, but I just want people to know. But now we're in a scenario where you've got this, where the opposition largely argued after Bondi, let's get back, let's shove in a new law, let's somehow either change the laws or I don't know what the expectations were. And I hate to say it, but the idea that on Monday the polls were showing Albo down 25 points in terms of personal likability, and by Wednesday his political opposition is now blowing itself up. This is an extraordinary series of own goals.
And an extraordinary capitulation. Only, I think it was just over 2 weeks ago, she was responding to a really dim-witted reporter's questions about whether or not she would like to see or whether or not she would oppose introducing into legislation, further criminalisation for hate speech in the context of the LGBT and other minority communities like, the people with disabilities, etc. And I remember watching it all play out and thinking, you absolute and utter moron. We already have legislation at our disposal for that. It's called the Sex Discrimination Act and also the Disability Discrimination Act. We have already had so many things at our disposal that this government could have enacted in this situation that weren't being used, but she was able to successfully dispatch that reporter and say, this is not what what these laws are intended to legislate and to actually tackle. It's about tackling anti-Semitism. It's about being targeted in our approach, and it's not a licence to go after free speech. Then not long after that, we're seeing this posturing, right, from others like Andrew Hastie, who just over 7 days ago said that he would not be voting for this bill. What happens? We'd see a total flip-flop from guys like that who have sold himself as a poster boy and a future leader of this political party, he's absolutely disgraced himself. People on principle are disgusted by what has happened in the last 48 hours. We knew that the coalition didn't have the numbers to be able to successfully defeat things, particularly when it got to the Senate, when it came to the hate speech laws. But on principle, it was an opportunity for them to say, no, we're not doing deals with the devil and getting into bed with Labor. And also, on principle, we're going to protect free speech. This is too chaotic. It's been rushed. But she dug the grave herself. As you said, she demanded that everyone get back into Parliament early. We need to do this. Yeah. What was her plan?
Well, also, in terms of the Nationals and the Nationals movement here, as you said, Stephen, the reason they're doing this, and I said it to Barnaby before, is that I think the internal thinking, and often political people sometimes up their own backside of thinking that tactics can solve everything and they can triangulate and all the rest of it. Obviously, the assumption is, look, if the Nats split from the Libs, they don't have to be defined by sort of, the softies and all the rest of it, right? They can be hardcore. They can turn around and spend the next 2 years saying, well, look, don't worry about One Nation. Effectively, One Nation is already in the Parliament. Now, again, I'm very friendly with lots of Nationals. I'm very friendly with lots of One Nation people. I'm very friendly with lots of Libs, right? So I'm not picking one here in and around the other. But as the strategy goes, do you think that's what the internal decision here is? Is that the reality was they want to be untethered from the internal conversation about the Liberal Party and which direction it has to go to save its arse?
Yeah, look, Paul Keating famously said, always back the horse named Self-Interest. It's the only one that's really trying. And the National Party absolutely do not care about the coalition. They do not care whether the Liberal Party can lead them to a victory in the future. They care about their bums on their seats, and they don't care who they have to shoot to get to that position of saving their own seats. They are wetting their pants.
But they're also aware, Stephen, that they're now in a situation where this is the Titanic, right? The ship is sinking, and now an attempt to try and mend this and try and patch up this already very ailing relationship is like rearranging the deck chairs. There's no point. Well, but can you blame them for that, really?
Well, no, but sorry, Stephen, I'm just going to jump over here because, Lucy, to further to what you've been saying tonight, hinting at for a long time as well, which is moral clarity, right? I believe in what I believe. I've always believed in what I believe, and there's a straight line, right? Not it changes every week or every particular situation.
Flip-floppers.
One of the reasons why Pauline Hanson and One Nation is doing what they're doing right now is because Pauline's been in the same spot since the late 1990s.
Think back to 30 years ago, Paulie, right? When the whole John Howard gun buyback scheme was going in, and it was so controversial at the time, but it was lauded by Labor leaders Kim Beazley and others who gave him support, including the Nationals at that time as well that supported John Howard's position. Guess who was against gun reform then, 30 years ago? Pauline Hanson. It's why she started to surge in the polls in Queensland and resonated so well. That really was the catalyst for her popularity. Guess what she's still against 30 years later? Gun reform. She has not flip-flopped. What she's been saying about immigration hasn't changed. What she's been saying about all of these other issues, about our energy policies, about coal-fired power, it's all the same. This version of the coalition, who knows who they are?
I've got an idea about what that hint of orange is on the dress, about whether it is One Nation coloured or not. We will find out as the year rolls on. Thank you very much, Lucy. Thank you, Stephen. Sorry to be so brief, but obviously breaking news, and our mate Mickey Kelly standing by. Thank you.